Thanks for joining me today. I have Mike Codella here with me. Mike was a native of New York, grew up around wise guys, became a police officer, NYPD. He had a fascinating career. He's going to tell his story today. I can't wait for you viewers to hear it. Also, he wrote a book, ALPHAVILLE, and it's about Alphabet City in 1988 and how they cleaned up the heroin trade down there. I mean, it's just fascinating. Stay tuned, and I'm going to be right back with Mike. Mike, I'll tell you, I think this is a fascinating story, and I'm dying for my viewers to hear this story. So we're gonna come right back in with Mike. Hi, Mike.
Yeah, my name's Mike Codella, and I'm a retired NYPD detective sergeant here in New York City.
Well, that's something. You know, I've seen, I've been to Alphabet City myself a few times. I had a friend of the Gambino family, Giggsy. You might have known who Giggsy was. He was with Angelo Emilio. And it might ring a bell. But I used to go down there with Giggsy all the time, in Alphabet City. Do a little shopping. They had everything down there. But this is about you. I want to talk about you, my friend. So let's, I got to ask you the question about your grandfather. Because I think that's an amazing story. If you could share that with us with Joe the Boss.
Sure. So, my grandfather came from Sicily. I think he arrived here when he was like 8 years old. He came here by himself. His sister, who was just a few years older than him, was already here. And like a lot of the immigrants, the poor Italian immigrants, or poor immigrants in general, he just became like a knockaround guy. Obviously he didn't go to school, and he had to do anything he could to feed himself. And he became friends with a lot of the people that we know now through history who were mob guys or connected guys. And my grandfather, whose name was Giovanni Privatera, became friends with, amongst other people, Joe the Boss Mazzarella. And they became such good friends. And my grandfather did some bootlegging, and he owned an after-hours club and a social club down in the Lower East Side off of Catherine Street. And Joe the Boss, they became such good friends that Joe the Boss would actually borrow my grandfather's diamond stick pin whenever he had to sit down or he wanted to impress people. And he'd borrow my grandfather's stick pin, and then of course he returned. And he became good friends, obviously, and then years later, he became very good friends with Lucky Luciano. And in fact, when Lucky Luciano was almost killed, that night or that evening, he came right from the scene of where he was almost killed. He came right to my grandfather's cafe the same evening.
Father kind of was in the middle of that war between the two bosses, Luciano coming up. So he's seen all this history being made, huh?
Yes, he was. He was. You know what? He was a likable guy. He was a tough guy. In fact, I'll tell you something that I don't believe is in my book. He actually got in trouble here in New York, and he went out to Boston and stayed in Boston for a few years, and then he got a little gem out there, and he came back to New York. So yeah, he was a knockaround guy, and a well-liked guy.
Yeah, well, back in those days, Boston and New York were tight. The guys are going back and forth. They sent the people here, back. There's a lot of history about that. In fact, I'm going to be doing a series on the Boston mob, going back right to the 1800s.
Wow.
So this will all incorporate. So this is a great story now that you're telling me. Now, where'd you grow up in Brooklyn?
Yes, I grew up in Canarsie, Brooklyn, yep.
All right, so you grew up around all these wise guys. You must have seen a lot of things.
I did. You can't, growing up in Brooklyn, you really can't help but to run into mob guys, see stuff, and know who's the guys, know who the players are, and like because of their stature and what they, the way they carry themselves. A lot of young guys, I don't have to tell you, you know better than anyone, but a lot of guys admire them guys or admire the mob guys and are attracted to that lifestyle.
Yeah, I was when I was a kid. My father was in the mob himself with the Patriarca family, for years, and I'll tell you, you go around these guys, you see the cars they drive and the money they have, the women, the suits. It's impressive. Coming up in an Italian in the neighborhoods like that, what are we gonna do? Become gangsters, construction workers, firemen, policemen? Well,
Right.
some of us big gangster,
Right? I know.
Yeah. And I'm surprised that seeing all this in the neighborhood, knowing about your grandfather, what made you become a cop?
I had a few instances as a kid, as a teenager growing up. Not so much that led me into law enforcement, because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I would say it's not leading me into law enforcement, but kind of led me away from the mob life.
Yeah.
I had a few instances with some well-known New York wise guys that, I got a bad feeling of how they treated each other, the treachery involved, and to be honest, I got spooked out of that lifestyle in my late teens, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can understand that, because that wasn't my first thought. That's not what I wanted to be. I was at the construction and developing, but somehow I was led right back. And ended up getting involved and becoming a boss, and we know the rest of the history from there.
Yeah. The money, I was never really super attracted to money. I mean, it wasn't, I always worked and I always had enough money in my pocket, basically for what I needed. I wasn't super attracted to beautiful cars or, so when I did get involved with these guys for these couple of incidents, it just kind of reinforced in my head that I don't need the money, I don't need the cars, and like I said, the treachery that was involved, and it kind of turned me off. So I guess I was actually kind of lucky that in an early age, I had some bad interactions.
Well, that ended up being a good thing. You took the right path in life. God bless you. And you didn't end up like most of us did, and that's a good thing. So how long have you been off the force?
I came on the force in 1983, and I retired in 2003. 20 years.
Oh, God bless. That's good. Praise God. Now they had you down in Alphabet City. You were working out of there.
When I first came on, I worked in Coney Island for a little while. And then I actually wanted to go somewhere where it was a little bit more active, where I felt like I could make a little bit more of an impact, be it as an aggressive cop or an active cop. So I transferred to Alphabet City, Manhattan's Alphabet City.
All right, and what, did they put you undercover down there? Were you uniform?
Initially, I was in uniform. I hooked up with a young guy, just a year or two older than me, also from Brooklyn, an Italian guy from Brooklyn. We had a lot in common. We became really good friends, and he thought a lot alike. Me and him thought a lot alike. The way we wanted to work, we wanted to make an impact. And then after being in uniform and after making some pretty good arrests together, we both went to a specialized, like an anti-crime unit, like a plainclothes government. It was actually a government funded anti-crime unit. And that's where we worked for, it was called Operation 8, and that's where we worked together for quite a few years.
Did you work with the DEA and FBI?
I did. After a couple of years in Alphabet City as an anti-crime cop, it was an anti-crime, like, narcotics unit.
Yeah.
They eventually, DEA was actually doing a pretty heavy case down in the Lower East Side, and they went to one of my chiefs, Chief Keating, and they asked him if they could, if the police department would put us on loan to the DEA and help them with this particular Lower East Side case, and that's what we did. We went up there and then I stayed for a few years after that, but initially we went up there for this one particular Alphabet City case.
Well, you know, later in your career, you said that you dealt with real evil when you started investigating the cult and all of this. What happened with that? Because I have an interest in that myself.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know you're a spiritual guy, and
Yes.
you know we both know that evil exists. I mean, I think there are degrees to how. I think there are degrees to evil, and you know, not every criminal is necessarily an evil person in their heart.
Mm-hmm.
But I got involved with this case that had to do with a satanic cult, and the informant on the case was actually a 1% biker, and he was in Attica State Prison for sodomizing his infant daughter.
Oh,
Yeah, really, really a tough case. Of course, when you're dealing with him, you have to overlook that because trying to get to the bigger picture or trying to get to the hierarchy of criminals. But yeah, you know, I had to sit down with this guy numerous times, look at him, treat him like a human being, even though he wasn't a human being really, and elicit information from him. He wanted to cooperate about some information he knew regarding this satanic cult and some human sacrifices that were involved, because not only was he a 1% biker, he was doing security for this cult, meaning him and his biker gang would secure the premise of these houses or these mansions. And in the mansions, there was drugs, sex, and satanic goings on in these mansions. And he eventually ingratiates himself with these satanic cult people, and he himself becomes this high satanic priest. Him and one or two of the other biker guys, and he, you know, like I said, you talk about evil. This guy was an evil.
yeah, that's the epitome of it. Yeah.
Epitome of evil. Yeah, exactly.
What spiritual condition were you in when you were going through this case? I'm sure you were a Catholic, Christian.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I know I don't have to tell you, but sometimes you have to put things on the back. You know, you can't. You know, you gotta stay strong in your faith, basically. You know, this guy exists. There are people worse than him, and they exist out there. But again, we had to get to the bigger picture, so I had to deal with him. And again, he wanted to get parole, so he was giving me all kinds of information. He wasn't shy about letting me know who he was and what he did and what he was into. And this cult, they were into all kinds of child mutilation and sex and with kids, and you know, you can't let it get to you. You gotta just sit there and let it not faze you, and let him think it doesn't faze you. Because if you get aggravated, or if he sees he's got you or upset you, then the whole dynamics changes. So you know, it's just like dealing with bad guys and not letting them see, you know, what's really going on in your head.
Oh no, I know, that's how we were taught. No, you're right, and I understand it's the same principle. You know, but a lot of people that get involved in that, you know, you're doing it in righteousness, obviously, but there's still openings for demonic attacks. Nothing like that happened to you through that, did it?
No.
That was a good thing. No, that was a good thing. Wow, so I'll tell you had an interesting career so far. That's amazing, Mike. No, it really is. Did you get, when you were on Undercover at Alphabet City and all these, working with the DEA, was there a lot of mob guys involved with this? With the heroin trafficking down there and
you know,
organized
the
crime?
heroin from the Lower East Side back in the 80s was 99% from China. It was China white heroin.
China white, yeah.
Yeah. Later on, when I started to do some undercover work, I was dealing with some American blacks, and I'll tell you a quick story, a little side story. So I meet these American blacks and tough guys, really bad guys. They had shot at a cop or shot a cop, and I was trying to buy crack from them. I was trying to buy heroin from them. But at some point, one of them is going to introduce me to an Italian guy who actually made the mistake of vouching for me. He didn't even know who I was, and he made the mistake of vouching for me. But when I meet the Italian guy through one of the black guys, because they dealt with this guy, this Italian guy. And they said, oh, I want you to meet this guy. Maybe you know him. He's from Brooklyn. He's a connected guy. And I met him. Anyway, he turned out he really wasn't a connected guy. He had some family down the line because we did some checks on him. He wasn't really anybody.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this, Bobby. The government wanted so bad to go after this Italian guy that they were willing to basically fold up the case that I was working just to send all their resources towards this one guy, towards this Italian guy from Brooklyn. Even though he was a nobody, he was a stiff. You know, he was basically a hoople, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But they wanted to focus all their resources on him, you know? And I just didn't let it go that way. I was the undercover, and, you know, I kind of led the case and dictated where I wanted the case to go. But it goes to show that the government sometimes goes out of their way to get mob guys simply for the publicity or bring down the line, you know, for the government. In their eyes, good publicity that they took down mob guys, you know?
Well, see, DEA and FBI, it boosts their career with the Italians. It always did, it always will. You know, although there's not that much activity up here in Boston anymore or down in Philly, but I know there's still a lot of activity in New York. But up here, it's really slowed down up here. There's not the influence up here anymore that there used to be. So I know that the FBI up here are going after these gangs and MS-13s, Lag Kings, whatever, you know, and they're pretty much laying off the Italians.
And they should be.
Yeah, no.
They should be.
Yeah. They're the ones committing the crimes now.
Yeah.
They're taking over the neighborhoods, especially neighborhoods I grew up.
And
you know.
And hurting civilians.
Yes, they are. They are. You know, I got another. Now this is a big deal. 9/11. You were there that day?
I was in the building because at that point in my career, I was working with the Secret Service task force. We were doing, we didn't do protection. We were doing investigation work for the Secret Service. Like, Secret Service used to fall under the Treasury Department. So we were doing like, counterfeiting and electronic crimes and, West African crimes. So my office was actually in 7 World Trade Center. So the day of the attacks, I was actually on my way to work. After the second building hit, I was actually in Manhattan. I pulled my car over as soon as I got to Manhattan, and I ran to the building, to the building that goes down first. Of course, I didn't know it was going to go down. I went in the building to help the people out.
Yeah.
And prior to going in, right before I went in, my cell phone was down. All cell phones were down. But as I was running into the World Trade Center, I stopped at a little bodega, a little grocery store for people that don't know what bodega is. It's a little grocery store, and I used the guy's hardline telephone, and I called my wife because she had saw the buildings go down. She was home, and I told her everything is fine. I'm not in the buildings, but I'm going there to help out. Nobody expected the buildings to go down. We thought once the planes hit, that was the worst of it. So I told her I'm fine. I'm going in to help out. I'll be fine. I went in the building. I started to help people out, and the building basically came down on my head while I was in the building. And of course, my wife thought I was in the building, and my whole family thought I was in the building. And of course, I went down, like, on down to the ground. I was covered with all that white stuff, and it was so dark. It was pitch black. People asked me what it was like. It was like if you closed your eyes and then you wrapped yourself up with black towels. That's how dark it was from the building just exploding. You couldn't see, you couldn't hear. The air was so thick, and I was on the ground. And it just so happened that a guy who I actually knew, he couldn't see me, like I said, because it was so dark. He couldn't see anyone. He had a big light that they used for explosions. He must have had it in his car. And he was carrying it, and he shined it up in the sky, and he said, if anyone could see that light, walk towards the light. And I was actually on my back, and I look up and I see the light, and I was able to get up, and I walked towards the light, and then he grabbed me, and he brought me in the building, and obviously I survived. But my wife at this
Praise
point
God.
didn't even know I'd survived because she
Yeah.
thought she knew I was in the building helping people out. So it was it was a rough day.
Well, when that happened, I was in FCC New York.
Oh wow.
So I was outside my cell, and my celly's watching the TV. He said, "Bobby, come in here, look at this." We saw the first plane hit, and we seen the building burning. Then all of a sudden, the other one hit.
Yeah.
The other one hits. Then we see the building coming down. When the second building came down, it knocked out everything. Everything in FCC, phones, everything are knocked out. Because I guess all those towers were in that building.
Right.
The phones, everything. And we were locked down in there for over a month. They locked us down right away. But lucky we had the rabbit ears, and we were watching everything on the TV. And that was a sad day. That was amazing. You know, praise God you got out of there, Mike, you know.
Yeah, thank you, thanks. Yeah, and I remember them locking you guys down.
Yeah.
You know, because I remember that the outside of MCC was tightly secured right after that.
Yeah, it was. They put up all the barricades, they put everything. And then right after the second tower went down, we were hearing jets coming over. That was probably the military coming in or whatever they were doing.
That's
You know,
right.
it was just, that was a sad day. That really was. You know, and I just happened to be in there, waiting for trial. And, yeah, like I said, they locked us down. It was miserable. Miserable.
But you weren't arrested in New York, correct?
No, but they didn't have a facility in Boston
Oh,
to keep us there.
right.
And I was already sent into the feds for something else. So MCC New York was the closest place to bring me up to Boston, so that's where they put me. I was there waiting another trial at the time, you know. So, yeah, I was stuck there. That was something, man.
Yeah.
There really was. So now, we gotta talk about this book, Mike. ALPHAVILLE. You wanna tell us about that?
Yeah, the book basically is I mean, it's basically my life story, but a lot of talking about my growing up in Brooklyn, like you said, with the wise guys, and then becoming a cop down in Alphabet City for quite a few years. And in that case with the DEA, and we ended up going up on a couple of wires, and we took down 40 heroin dealers in Alphabet City.
Wow.
Alphabet City. Yeah, 40 big.
Wow, that's
we
great.
actually changed. I mean, when I first got down to Alphabet City, actually before that, when I was in the police academy, and my French father used to drive us once in a while to the police academy. Every once in a while, he would drive through Alphabet City as a shortcut to get to where we had to go, and you would see lines of people waiting in the straight line, and they didn't look the healthiest. They looked like drug addicts, a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't understand what these 30, 20, 30, 40 people were doing in a line out on a regular street. What were they waiting? I couldn't understand what they were waiting for. And my friend's father told me they're waiting here to cop heroin. This is Alphabet City. That's what they do. They get in a line, they wait, they get their money, and I was amazed. Anyway, that's one of the reasons I wanted to go down to Alphabet City, because I wanted to put a dent into what I had seen. And eventually, when we went, after making all these drug arrests with my unit, when I went with the DEA, we were able to take down 40 of the biggest heroin dealers in Alphabet City, and they were all connected. It was a big RICO case, and we actually changed the face of Alphabet City to where it's now like a gentrified, and rents there are astronomical, and the people in the projects could actually live a normal life. When I was over there as a cop, I mean, little kids, they couldn't even walk through the streets without stepping on hypodermic needles or bags of dope, empty bags of dope on their feet. It was terrible. They couldn't even play in the park. It was terrible. But we took down all these dealers, and Alphabet City dried up for the most part of heroin, and we did a number down there. We changed the face of it.
Wow, that's great. That is good. I mean, you know, I'm guilty myself of dealing drugs, but it was cocaine and marijuana. But these pills, this heroin, people need that to get out of bed every day. I would never touch that. Like, I'm not an angel. Like I said, I can't justify what I did, but I would never touch that product.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it changes lives. It ruins lives. Really, families, lives, everything.
Yeah. I know, because then eventually it came onto our family, and I lost my oldest daughter to that. You know, so, you know, I'm really against that, and I'm glad, you know, I'm happy what you did down there. And but it seems like
actually, that's one of the reasons I got involved with the narcotics, because a good friend of mine growing up as a little kid, I mean, when I was really young, my neighbor across the street from me, his sister was on junk.
Yeah.
And, you know, it devastated the whole family. You know, I remember his sister, who wasn't old. She was at the time, maybe when she started, she was 15, 16, 17, and then right into the teens and 20s. She passed away young, but I remember what it did to the family. I remember her going from house to house trying to sell. She would actually go to the grocery store, steal like a roast beef, and go house to house trying to sell the roast beef so she could go cop heroin. And I mean, you know, that was very vivid in my mind what that shit did to people. And so it put me on a track to, you know, kind of put an end to it.
Yeah, God bless. That was good. That was good. But, you know, up here, they got this problem now with the fentanyl. There's people ODing all the time up here.
Here too.
They're pushing it hard up here now. You know, when I was coming up in the 80s and the 90s, it was, cocaine was the big thing. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anybody that was doing heroin, it was on the side, a secret. But now it's like, they're all doing it. They're all doing it. It's sad.
It's crazy. That's how it was in Alphabet City, which is another reason why, you know, it was so upsetting to me, because it was almost accepted. Like, people were snorting dope the way other people smoke cigarettes. It wasn't, they didn't consider themselves junkies.
Yeah.
They didn't consider each other junkies if they were snorting. I'll tell you just a quick story. I locked up this guy. There was this guy from, you know, Avenue D guy, and he wasn't a bad guy. He came out from being arrested, and initially we had like a little beef. Me and my partner, we didn't like him, but then we got to know him. He really wasn't a terrible guy. But in any event, at some point I have to lock him up for pushing dope. He's moving, you know, he's doing hand to hands, and I got no choice. I gotta lock him up. He's got like 500 bags of dope on him. He's gotta go. Anyway, at this point I liked him, but he had to go. He had too much on him. I couldn't let him go. He tells me he's gonna get sick in the camp. You know, he needs to get high. I didn't want him to get sick. Again, I like the guy.
Yeah.
10 bags of dope. He didn't need 1 bag of dope to stay fixed or stay straight. Not 2, not 3. He needed 10 bags of dope.
Wow.
Just so he wouldn't get sick. And this was a guy you wouldn't even make as a junkie because he looked healthy. He was in decent looking shape.
Mm-hmm.
And he needed 10 bags. I had to give him 10 bags of dope so he wouldn't get sick.
Wow. Yeah, because I guess your body gets immune to it, builds up a tolerance, and you need more and more and more. I've heard of guys on the street actually going to clean out so they could come back out and take less. If that makes sense. This is what they were doing.
Yeah.
You know, their habit got so heavy, they go clean out, and eventually it would build up again.
Yep.
You know, it's sad because I seen what my daughter went through, and my daughter never did anything bad like this. She worked hard, you know, she was a giver, and I just can't believe that happened. But
sad.
It is, it's sad. You know, it really is. All right, you got to tell me about this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. What's happening with that? No, you know what? I used to watch the Gracie brothers. Remember the Gracie brothers?
Sure, that's who I train with. The Gracie family.
Yep.
Yeah. So, like most people, I watched the Gracies and back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And actually, there was no internet back then. There was no Hensel Gracie didn't advertise in the yellow pages. All I heard was that he used to rent out the back of a Chinese martial arts school a couple of days a week on 27th Street is what I heard. So one day during work, I got in the police car and I drove from the east side of Manhattan to the west side of Manhattan, and I rang every bell that had any kind of martial arts in it. And I would ask, does Hensel Gracie teach here? and some of them would get mad at me for asking. You know, it's kind of an insult, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And they would get pissed off, slam the door at me, not answer me, not. And then finally, towards the end, I rang a bell. A little Chinese woman answered. Kung Fu school it was, and I said, "Does Renzo Gracie teach you?" And she said, "Yeah, she's here on I think it was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday morning." I said, "Okay, good." And then I went back. I trained a little bit. I liked it. I met Renzo. We became really close, and I've been with him since like 1998. Got my black belt in 2007, and he just gave me my 4th degree black belt about 3 weeks ago.
Wow, that's great. That's a great accomplishment. Yeah, you know, I love that. When they were fighting in the octagon years ago,
Yeah,
they were big.
tough guy.
Yeah, they were big, the Gracies.
Yeah, and good people too. You know,
Yeah,
they nobody gave them anything. They worked hard and they made a name for themselves.
Yeah.
And they put it all on the line, and you know, good people.
yeah, very disciplined people, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, now I know you got a YouTube channel now.
I do.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that, what you're doing on there, and let everybody know? Because I'm going to put a link underneath the show so
thanks.
they could go to it.
Thank you, Bobby. Yeah, it's called. It's my name, mikecodella, and it's called Up Against the Wall. And you know, I talk a lot about the book, a lot of the stories in the book. I talk about, I work, like we started to touch on a little bit with the cult. I talk about, the cult was involved with Son of Sam. I don't know, a lot of younger viewers may not know who Son of Sam was, but he was a serial killer here in New York City, and he was actually involved with this cult. Well, at least it's alleged that he was involved with this cult that I'm dealing with. Son of Sam, a little kid named Eton Pates who was abducted. I worked that case. I've been lucky enough, fortunate enough to work some high-profile cases, interesting cases. Like I said, that guy Tiny, that 1% biker guy. I talk about him. So yeah, it's called Up Against Mikecodella, Up Against the Wall, and I think it's kind of interesting. A lot of guys comment that they like the stories, so I'll keep it up until I guess I run out of stories, Bobby.
There's always stories, Mike. There's always stories, you know. But it's good you got your book out, and you can talk about all that on the show. You know, that's a good thing. My book's not out yet, so I'm kind of restricted what I could say on my show, but, you know, I still have a lot of interviews. We do a lot of shows, so, you know, it works out, you know.
Yeah, I follow your channel. I get a kick. I enjoy it. I get a kick out of it.
Yeah, so we get the Wednesday night show is just to interact with everybody, and,
Yes.
you know, then we got a lot of good interviews up there, too.
Yes, I know. I've seen a lot of them, actually. Very nice.
Thank you. So what are you doing besides the YouTube? Are you just staying with that right now, or?
No, I actually have a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academy.
Right, no, I know that, yeah.
Yeah, I teach. I teach. I got a lot of Jiu-Jitsu fighters on my academy. I'm actually in negotiations with some TV stuff regarding the book.
Oh, God bless. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's going really well. And I, like I said, I just fooled around with this YouTube channel for a little while, see how that goes.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'll tell you, you had an interesting life, Mike. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed you being here. Oh, yeah, anytime, please. Come on.
I appreciate it.
If you ever want me on your show, let me know.
Absolutely. I'm going to do that. I'm going to take you up on that, Bobby, really.
All right, great. I'll come on anytime for you, Mike.
I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Yeah. Thank you, and God bless. And thank you for being on today.
You too. God bless. Thank you.
All right, brother.
Bye-bye.
Bye.